Hi everyone, welcome back to the Pro MMA Betting Podcast. Firstly, as always, we'll do a quick recap on UFC just gone. So it was our second losing UFC event of the year, takes us to 11-2 on UFC events. Night basically hinged on Jacare. Unfortunately for us, he lost. I scored it 3-2 for Hermansson. Really solid performance from Hermansson. Not sure if I think I underestimated Hermansson. To be fair, he's made some drastic improvements since earlier on in his UFC career, possibly coupled with Jacare slowing down as well. My biggest worry going into the fight was Jacare's at that age where he could age overnight, but I don't want to be dismissive of Hermansson's performance and say that's what it was down to. Perhaps there is that side to it, but Hermansson stepped up and I underestimated him. So we took a 3-unit loss on pre-bets on the night. Live betting across boxing, which was on before the UFC and the UFC, we won about 2 units. We was really unfortunate with the Orlovsky decision. We had 2 units from live betting on that, so that cost us 2 units profit there. So it should have been a 4-unit night on live betting. But I don't like to bitch and moan about decisions. It was a bad decision, but they tend to even themselves out across the year. We will get some that probably shouldn't go our way at some point, so normally it evens out, so I'm not going to bitch and moan about it. So overall, across pre-betting and live betting, we was minus 1 unit, so nothing major, small loss on the night. Hopefully we can bounce back this week for the Ottawa card. Quite a tough card actually for betting, not the easiest one. So we're going to have a look at that card in a moment and break that down. Just to remind everyone, so if you are a £100 per unit or $100 per unit better, you would be up £6,400 with the service in 2019. You can look at prommmabetting.com. All the subscription packages are on there for pre-betting and live betting and both combined. Please give us a follow on Twitter at prommmabetting. We post our bet slips on there. I like you guys to know that I am betting what I'm tipping, and also like to verify that we are the world's highest stakes MMA tipster. And please give us a subscribe on the YouTube channel. Trying to get the followers up to 500 as quickly as possible. Went 9-4 on predictions for the UFC just gone, so still keeping the winning ratio high. I think I've only had one UFC all year where I either went 50-50 on the night, or it was like I got 6 right, 7 wrong. Just the one UFC. Every other UFC, so we've had 13 UFC events so far, so 12 of them I've predicted more right than wrong, and I tend to be averaging around the kind of 8-3, 9-4 kind of mark. So pretty happy with the predictions. I predicted that Sandhagen would win. Very close fight, could have gone either way. I predicted Glover would win, and there was also another underdog on the card. They was all in succession that I predicted would win. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. I didn't bet any of them, which is really frustrating. So that's something I do need to analyse as a bettor. I'm looking to improve all the time, adapt, make sure we're making as much profit as possible. So picked 3 dogs there. I'm sure they all fought successively, and I didn't bet any of them, so regret in that sense. But let's see what we can do with this Ottawa card. So we're going to move on and start breaking the card down now. It's not the best card when Elias Theodorou is the co-main event. So but we'll start from bottom up as always and go through the fights. First fight of the night, we've got Mitch Gagnon returning from a 2.5-year layoff, taking on the debuting Cole Smith in the men's bantamweight division. Mitch, he tore his ACL in the fight with Renan Barriault. He was out for about 2 years. He came back, fought Matthew Lopez, lost the decision there after having a good first round. Looked like he was going to stop Lopez, but Lopez managed to recover, and he lost rounds 2 and 3, basically got out wrestled. He subsequently tore his ACL training for his next fight, so he's been out for 2.5 years, 34 years of age now. He's a Canadian fighter. I'm sure he's had visa issues in the past as well with regards to fighting in America. I haven't read anything on that recently, but just in the back of my mind, I'm sure that has been a problem for him. But I mean, it looks like the layoff's purely been due to the same ACL tear. So he's torn that ACL twice now. Cole Smith, from the tape I've watched, very tall for bantamweight. He's 6 foot or 6'1", so extremely tall for the weight. Seems like his one and only intention is to try and force that takedown as quickly as possible. Takedowns don't look great. He tends to favour kind of shucking to the back from the clinch against the fence and taking your back. It's got that long frame, so you don't really want someone like that on your back. There's a 5-round fight available from about a year ago where he beat a guy with I think he had a 4-3 or 5-4 record, which is pretty much 5 rounds of him clinching him against the fence. Couldn't get the takedown generally, but did have success shucking to the back and managing to jump on his back and pull him to the ground. So, you know, the footage is a year old. He is 30 years of age, so how much improvement would he have made in that year? I'm not sure. It's difficult at that age to make big leaps. He's only had 6 fights, 3 amateur losses. His last amateur loss is available. It's in 2015, so we are going back 4 years, but had his back easily taken and was choked out. So it's hard to get a full gauge on Cole. He definitely doesn't look overly comfortable standing, but with Mitch, I mean, it's hard to be confident in him as well. 2.5 years out, he's basically had 1 fight in pretty much 5 years. You know, where is he at? I'm going to go with Mitch. He's been in there with a higher level of competition. He looked like, you know, he was kind of bordering the top 15 at one point. He started his UFC career out with 4 straight wins. So I have to go with him. He does look the more skilled fighter as well from watching the tape. Cole, it looks like Cole might be one of these guys that, you know, he does alright on the regional scene, but very one-dimensional, and he doesn't have good wrestling to get the fights to where he wants them to be either. So he might be dangerous on the mat. It's hard to gauge when you've been fighting inferior competition, but then he couldn't finish a 4-3 guy. It went 5 rounds. So there are question marks over Mitch with the layoff, with the injuries, etc. Cole has been active in the time that Mitch has been out, but ultimately I've got to go veer with experience here. Mitch, he's only got 1 knockout loss, but he's got some power in his hands. You know, decently well-rounded guy. And as I say, Cole does seem like a guy that's just, his sole purpose is to drive you into the cage, get into the clinch, and try and take you back. Which is, unless you're Demian Maia level backpacker, it just doesn't work in modern MMA. So I'm going to go with Mitch there to win. Possibly a decision. It's hard to predict how he'll win this fight. There's, you know, quite a lot of unknowns, but yeah, I'm going to side with Mitch. From a betting perspective, the betting line's at -135 for Mitch, which I was going to say it seems a little generous, but you know, there's a lot of question marks. So it's the layoffs, 1 fight in 5 years. You know, it's hard to be confident, but I'd say that's, you know, if you're going to bet the fight, I don't think that's a bad line, but you need to be aware you're going into it with unknown, so I wouldn't recommend anyone, you know, going above a unit on this type of fight. Next, men's heavyweight division. Everyone knows my favourite low-level heavyweight fights. We've got Arjun Bhullar taking on Juan Adams. Arjun Bhullar, Canadian fighter, so home fight for him. Won a gold medal at the 2010 Commonwealth Games in wrestling for Canada. 32 years of age. We've seen him in the UFC 3 times now. Won his debut against Louis Enrique. Lost to the Polish chap Adam Wizarek. Got omoplated in that fight. Really embarrassing loss, really. Dominated the first round and omoplated in round 2. And won a decision over Marcelo Gome in his last fight. Juan Adams, we've seen him on the Contender Series. Big guy. I think he cuts down to get to 265, 6'5". Yeah, real kind of giant. Contender Series, we saw him take out Sean Tweed really quickly, and then we saw his debut back in December against Chris De La Rocha. I managed to stop him in the 3rd round. I don't want to be too hard on Adams. He didn't blow me away in that fight. Looked like he was slowing down. but UFC debut, you know, he's a guy that could be making improvements in his game. Only 27 years of age. He's a confident chap. He keeps calling out on Twitter for a fight with Greg Hardy. So it'd be great if they matched these two up, but I think the UFC are intent on giving Hardy as many winnable fights as possible. So they may avoid that one for now. Anyway, pretty hard fight to call here. Adams has got a 6-inch reach advantage, 6 years younger, 4-inch height advantage. Buller, he averages basically 1.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, which, when you consider he's had 2 fights go 15 minutes and he's got this wrestling pedigree, doesn't tend to kind of overly rely on the wrestling, which you'd maybe expect and maybe want him to do. He's fairly low volume and he lands 2 significant strikes per minute. Adams up at basically 10 significant strikes landing per minute, but we're kind of going off the Chris De La Rocha fight, who is a bit of a punch bag, so it's a skewed stat really. But yeah, I do favour Adams. I think this is standing. Do I worry about his gas tank? I mean, Buller did gas against a Polish guy, but he's 1, 2, 3 rounders as well, so maybe he's got that under control now. Is Buller going to be able to get his wrestling going here against a bigger guy? I don't know. It's a tough fight to call. I'm definitely not betting it. I think it's a pick 'em line. Last time I looked, I'm going to go with Adams. But if he does end up on his back, he's probably going to be in trouble. So I mean, Buller would be wise to. Adams actually the favourite now, -140. But yeah, Buller would be wise to try and put Adams on his back, because heavyweight on their back, it doesn't tend to end very well, albeit Buller's not exactly a demolisher from top position. But I'll go with Adams. But yeah, low level heavyweight fight, you know me guys, 99% of the time I don't even think about betting it. Anything could happen, but I'll go with Adams to win. A messy fight. Yeah, I've kind of lost faith in Buller after the way he lost to the Polish chap. I mean, getting him applauded is kind of unforgivable, especially at heavyweight. I think there's been like 2 omoplatas in the history of the UFC. So yeah, I'll go with Adams, but it's not a confident pick, and it's not a fight I've overly looked into either, because as I say, low level heavyweight, it's kind of an automatic pass for me. It's one that I'm, unless someone says to me to definitely look at it, because there's definitely a betting angle, then I tend not to delve too deep on them, because I'm not going to bet it. So anything could happen. One punch and it's game over. So yeah, pass for me completely on a betting perspective, and Adams, I'll go with Adams to win that fight, and I'd like to. Hopefully, he doesn't look too impressive, and they match him up with Hardy, because that's a fight I'd like to see. Kyle Nelson, Matt Sayles next in the men's lightweight division. So Kyle Nelson, this is his second fight in the UFC. Matt Sayles, his second fight as well, if you don't include his Contender Series fight. Kyle's got 3-inch height advantage, 6-inch reach advantage. They're both orthodox. Kind of only really, the stats are going off 1 fight each, so they're a bit skewed. I'm not really going to look at strikes landed and etc. But what I can tell you is these guys don't go for takedowns, so it's going to be a stand-up fight basically. Matt Sayles, I think he's a decent prospect, only 25 years of age, fights out of Team Alliance. He reminds me of Lando Venata in a way, but a Lando with cardio. Guy's got good cardio. Showed that in his UFC debut when he took on Shayman Morales. Competitive fight with Shayman. Shayman won the first 2 rounds, but he slowed down and Matt took over in round 3. We saw him with a really quick win on the Contender Series. Before that, he fought Christian Aguilera on CFFC 64. I remember when I capped Matt Sayles for the Contender Series, I don't know if I found the whole fight, but I found the finish, and it was a real lovely combination that he finished Aguilera with on the feet. Lost to George Hickman. We're going back nearly 2.5 years ago now. I did watch that fight. I didn't watch it kind of inherently in terms of scoring it, but I don't know. I think he maybe should have got that decision. George, I think he had some success early, George, with his wrestling, but after that it was pretty much on the feet. Sayles did slow down in that fight, but as I said, I'm confident in his cardio after the Shayman Morales fight, and I think his cardio probably looked better than Hickman. I mean, it was close, but maybe Sayles should have edged that, but he was only like 22 years of age then. At that age, these guys make big improvements in their game. So yeah, I think he's a decent fighter, Matt Sayles. I think he's got some promise. He rolls with punches really well. Perhaps he's a little bit hittable, but I'm going off kind of the Shayman Morales fight there, who is, I had Shayman beating Yusuf until he got knocked down in that third round. I had him winning the second round to even it up, and I had him edging round 3 until he got knocked down. So Shayman Morales, if you look at his record in the UFC, hasn't done great, but I mean, look at who he's fought. He's fought killer after killer, so the guy's legitimate. So, but yeah, I mean, even on the pro circuit, I mean, Matt Sayles in his third fight, he fought a 7-1 guy. He then fought a 3-0 guy. Then he fought a 5-1 guy. So it's not like he's been absolutely destroying complete bums. They've given him some decent guys, and he fought George Hickman, Christian Aguilera, decent record. Yes, and Hager on the Contender Series, decent record, and then Shayman Morales, beast. So yeah, he's been mixing it with decent people. Nice striking, solid power, rolls with punches well, nice combinations. Believe in his cardio, set a high pace against Shayman Morales. Kyle Nelson, I think it was a short notice UFC debut against Thiago Santos. He came out strong in the first round, the first couple of minutes anyway. He hurt Santos, I think it was with a teep kick to the body he caught him. Hurt Santos to the body, but Santos ultimately took over, started to land his shots on the feet in the second half of the first round, got a takedown, dominated him on the floor, and then a quick takedown in round 2. Nelson seemed to slow down in that fight as well, but like I said, it did seem to be short notice. When I went back and watched his fights prior, he had a couple of fights I think over in Romania, which seemed quite strange to me. A Canadian flying over to Romania. I wonder what money he was getting for them fights. Fought 2 absolute bums, easy wins. You just couldn't take anything from those fights. He's got a fight with Jonathan Brookins that is available. It's from about 2.5 years ago now, but wasn't an overly impressive performance from Kyle. He does seem to have improved going off the first couple of minutes against Thiago Santos, but the Brookins fight, wasn't impressive. Brookins tried to wrestle him a lot in that fight, but the stand-up wasn't much in the stand-up, and Brookins doesn't look very good stand-up, and Nelson didn't look good standing, looked pretty rough around the edges. And there's also another fight available. It's getting on for it's 3.5 years old now, against an Adrian Hadribage, where he lost a unanimous decision. Pretty much got outstruck in that fight, kind of got pot-shotted from the outside. So he seems to have made improvements. He did look better against Santos the first couple of minutes. As I said, he landed some decent shots and he did hurt him to the body. So it's how much has he improved? He's only 28, so there's definitely room for him to have improved. He's going to have a big reach advantage here. He's bigger than Sayles. Sayles to me looks like he can definitely make featherweight, so there's going to be a size disadvantage here. But ultimately, from what I've seen, I am going to side with Matt Sayles here. First round may be competitive, but I do see Sayles taking over down the stretch. Needs to avoid the big shots from Nelson, because he does seem to have a bit of power, albeit a number of them KOs fairly recent anyway from the fights I watched, like ground and pound wins, but he does seem to have a bit of power on the feet, but he does he loads up a little bit too much. So interesting fight here, but I'm going to side with Matt Sayles. I think he's sitting at around -200, -220 at the moment. Maybe that could come in a little bit, because there are some unknowns with Kyle in terms of how much has he improved. I mean, Thiago Santos is a tough fight, short notice UFC debut, and we haven't seen him face any adversity besides the Santos fight since the Brookins fight, which is 2.5 years ago. So there is plenty of time for Nelson to have developed his game and improved. So a few unknowns, but my gut definitely sides with Sayles. I think he's a decent prospect, and as I said, he kind of reminds me of Lando Veneta, but a Lando with cardio. So, if Lando had cardio, he'd be a solid fighter. So don't want to annoy Matt Sayles with that title too soon, but looks like a decent fighter to me. So I'm excited to see how he does here against Carl Nelson. Men's welterweight division, we've got Nordine Taleb taking on Kyle Prepelic. Nordine was meant to fight Saya. He's pulled out. Kyle's in short notice replacement. I've got to side with Nordine here. He's coming off a couple of tough losses. Got submitted by Claudio Silva, knocked out by Sean Strickland. But Kyle's a lightweight. He's moving up to welterweight here on short notice. He's coming off a win over Cody Pifster, a UFC veteran, but Cody's terrible. Kyle didn't overly impress me on tape. Nordine should, and this Nordine is shot, which he is 37 years of age now, so there may be some kind of decline happening. I'm starting to get a little bit worried about his chin potentially. Sean Strickland stopped him last time out, but he's been over in Thailand working on his stand-up like he always does. Comes back just to finish his camp at TriStar. It should be a comfortable win for him here. I did see the line. The line got released at like an even line, which was pretty crazy in my opinion. It's now it's blown up to minus 400 for Nordine, so sizable favourite here. But I have to pick him. It's always hard to bet minus 400 favourites in MMA because you just never know what's going to happen. There's a lot of chalk there, but he should outstrike Kyle to a comfortable win if he wants to. Could even mix in takedowns. We saw him do that against Oliver Enkamp, and I watched a fight where Kyle lost the decision in King of the Cage, where he just got easily out wrestled by a guy. So I think this is a tough fight for Kyle to be taking on short notice. Good luck to him, but Nordine for me all day there. Right, back to the men's bantamweight division. We've got Aiemann Zahabi, so Faraz's brother, returning from an 18-month layoff, taking on Vince Morales. Quick look over the stats. Both similar height, 5'8 to 5'7 for Zahabi. Morales 2-inch reach advantage, 70 inches to 68. He's 3 years younger is Morales. Morales significant strikes landed per minute up at almost 6. But I think we're just going off the one UFC fight against Yadong Song there. Zahabi down at just over 3. Both absorb quite a lot. Zahabi up at nearly 4. Morales up at over 5. But hard to read too much into these stats because they've had so few UFC fights. No takedowns attempted from either. We can expect a stand-up fight here. Zahabi, he looked decent in his UFC debut against Vieira. Took on Ricardo Ramos in his last fight, competitive fight, going into the third round. I think I had it 1-1. Got brutally knocked out of a spinning back elbow, and we've not seen him for 18 months basically. I'm not sure the reason for the layoff. Vince Morales, I'm fairly familiar with Vince. I actually bet him on the Contender Series against Domingo Pilate. I remember being a little bit hesitant when I made the bet because I was worried about if he got taken down, what would happen, and ultimately he had Pilate hurt badly on the feet, but he got taken down at the start of the second round and got choked out. So that is a bit of a worrying area for him. But he's got a solid stand up. He's got big power. We saw him against Yadong Song. I bet Song in that fight, and I haven't gone back and watched it here, but I do remember Song. He won the first couple of rounds comfortably. I remember the third round being a little bit more competitive, but it's kind of, when I've got a bet on a fight, it does kind of skew my memory of the fight, and a lot of the times fights where they are comfortable wins seem a lot closer on the day than they actually were, just because I've got money on the fight. But I think I remember Song mixing in a lot of takedowns in that fight. He is dangerous on the feet. He definitely has power, Morales. So Zahabi's coming back off a brutal knockout loss. I'm going to go with... I'll go with Zahabi to win here. he is a well-trained, well-schooled fighter, but he needs to watch the power of Morales, because this guy can definitely crack. And Zahabi's 31. He's getting up there in age for a bantamweight. He's had an 18-month layoff. Potentially he can mix in the ground game as well. We haven't really seen him utilise that in the UFC, but he's from TriStar, so I imagine he's going to be well-rounded. He's Faraz's brother, so he might need to lean on that here. So a tough fight to call. Zahabi is a favourite, -165. Very tough fight to bet, in my opinion. Morales definitely has a chance on the feet with that power that he possesses. I just think the well-roundedness that Zahabi can bring here might just be enough. Takedown defense is a weakness for Morales. As I said, with Zahabi, we haven't seen him use takedowns in the UFC, but I think it would be wise to mix things up here and exploit an area that Morales is weak in. And TriStar always have good game plans, and it's Faraz's brother, so I'm sure Faraz has spent time executing a solid game plan for Zahabi here. So I'll go with Zahabi to win a competitive decision, but I'm not overly confident, because if this does stay on the feet for 3 rounds, Vince cracks hard for a bantamweight, so it would be a sweaty bet for me. So I'll take Zahabi decision, but yeah, he's a moderate favourite. I don't think I could play him as a moderate favourite, but probably the line's maybe a little bit wide, but I mean Zahabi probably the rightful favourite, just because I feel there is a weakness in Morales' game, and Zahabi, albeit we haven't seen it from him in the past, I expect that he's got that in his back pocket where he could possibly exploit it. Domingo Pilate took him down and subbed him, so yeah, but he might have to overcome some worrying moments in this fight, because Morales does crack. Last fight before we go on to the main card, Macy Chiasson taking on Sarah Moras. Yeah, Macy should win this fight. She's got some big power for a woman. We saw in her last fight, quick knockout win. I had her in a parlay in her last fight. Won't be touching her here though. She's juiced beyond belief. The line is up now at -650. Yeah, I'm staying away from that for sure. I mean, Sarah isn't great, but she is dangerous if she can get you to the mat. She's got decent submission skills. So Macy needs to be careful in that sense, especially where she's really long. Macy, she's got long limbs. Needs to be careful if she does end up on the ground. She doesn't leave an arm in there or something. So, if I bet Macy, if it hit the ground, I would be sweating. But I think Macy's going to put her away on the feet. This girl's a finisher. She's got brutal knees in the clinch, on the fence. She's got power in her hands. Yeah, I like a finish here for Macy, but -650. But I will be interested to see what her inside the distance line is. The fight not to go to a decision is -265. So I imagine Macy inside the distance isn't going to be too much different. So yeah, you're not going to get a great line for it. I mean, it's a woman's fight, so you don't really want to be paying the juice just in case. But if we just have a look at Sarah, has she been finished? 5-4. I know she's a tough girl. I remember her fight with Jessica Andrade. Decision. Juliana Pena guillotined her on The Ultimate Fighter in round 2, 6 years ago. Raquel Pennington decision. She's a tough girl, Sarah, but Macy does bring some power that you don't often see. I mean, she's still a little bit raw, but you don't often see that kind of power that she's got. I mean, she dropped Pani before she finished her. That's what led to the finish. Took out Letson on The Ultimate Fighter, knee to the body. Pacheco she took out. I remember, I didn't watch this fight for this purpose, but I did watch his fight when I bet her against Mazzani against Addison Schmidt, which is about a year ago. Went to a decision, but she did drop Addison Schmidt in that fight as well. So this girl definitely knows how to finish. But I'll be interested to see where the lines. I don't really want to bet the fight that goes to a decision. It's going to be a sweat. But Morales is tough, so yeah, it's probably going to be, at best you're going to get -200 on Chiasson inside the distance, which it's too juiced. That's pass fight completely for me. But yeah, Chiasson there, I think probably gets the stoppage over Cerrone Moras. Main card now, so we move to the men's middleweight division. We've got Marc-André, not sure how to pronounce the surname, French Canadian chap I assume, taking on Andrew Sanchez. Quick look over I don't know if stats are available actually for Mark. He's they are. So we've got both same height, 6'1", 1 inch reach advantage for Marc-André. Both orthodox. Andrew's a couple of years older. Andrew's stats: 5 significant strikes per minute, absorbs exactly the same 5, averages just under 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, 37% takedown accuracy, 100% takedown defense. So Andrew's been in the UFC a while now. We first saw him on The Ultimate Fighter. Ultimately won The Ultimate Fighter up at light heavyweight. Defeated Khalil Roundtree in the final. Just wrestled him for 3 rounds basically. Since then we've seen him come into the UFC. He beat Trevor Smith. Just stood with Trevor Smith for 3 rounds. Trevor Smith, decorated Division 1 wrestler, so didn't mess around with the wrestling, just outstruck him. That's where we saw him kind of slow down a bit in that fight. Trevor did as well, so Trevor couldn't take advantage, but yeah, we did see Andrew slow down in that fight. Then he fought Anthony Smith. The first 2 rounds, solid. He was 2 rounds up going into round 3 against Anthony Smith. Mixed in his wrestling. I thought he was outstriking Anthony as well. There wasn't much in the striking, but I thought he was getting the better of the striking. Anthony does look vastly improved at light heavyweight. This was at middleweight. And then the third round, first couple of minutes of the third round, he was fine. Then all of a sudden, he just gassed completely. You can actually notice it if you go and watch it. You'll see the start of the third round. He's fighting. There's a point. I think it's about 1.5 minutes into the round. Just absolutely gasses, and then ultimately he gets caught and gets knocked out with about 1 minute left in a fight that he was going to win a decision in. Ryan James fight, that fight is probably a blessing in disguise for Andrew. He came out the gate 100 miles an hour. He had Ryan badly hurt. How Ryan survived, I don't know. A lot of referees probably would have even stopped that fight in the first round. But yeah, he completely blew his wad going for the finish, and then it was just a systematic beat down. The tide turned the last couple of minutes of round 1, then round 2. Sanchez was just absolutely gassed completely, and ultimately got stopped here early round 3. So cardio, obviously an underlying issue. He changed camps. He went to TriStar before his last fight against Marcus Perez, and Andrew looked like stylistically definitely changed his style. Fought very intelligently against Marcus Perez, Marcus Perez is a decent fighter. He's very athletic, very unorthodox. So I was quite impressed with Andrew in that fight. He completely changed his style up. Instead of kind of throwing hard punches, it was more of a pow. Really kind of more relaxed with the shots, not putting everything into them. Which, to be fair, I think that's a great adjustment that he's managed to make in kind of a short space of time. Kind of 9 months since the James fight. It looks like TriStar might be the perfect camp for him, because you could definitely see the way he was throwing his shots. He wasn't throwing them with the venom that he did before. Definitely paced himself better. The slight worry is he now scared to wrestle because he's scared of his cardio. There was a lot of clinch fighting against Perez. He put him on the fence and would control him on the fence for spells, but didn't really attempt any takedowns. Not very committed 100% to me. So that is going to be the worry moving forward with Sanchez, is his cardio, and is he going to kind of just gas at any point still. The Perez fight, he went solid for 3 rounds at finding the 3 rounds there. Ate some big body kicks as well from Perez. But yeah, I mean, I was pretty impressed with that performance when you consider how he fought previously in all of his UFC fights, and how we had seen him slow down in all of them, to then come out and look much more measured against Marcus Perez, who isn't the easiest guy to kind of put in that kind of performance, especially for the first time. So yeah, there was a close competitive fight with Marcus, but definitely the right decision in Sanchez being the winner. Marc-André, I went back and watched a number of his fights because I'd never seen him before. 11-1 professional record. His fights are all available on Fight Pass, the TKO organisation. All their fights are streamed on Fight Pass, so you can go back and watch him. So I went back, I watched from the Ted Stout fight, basically, which is about 18 months ago. That was up at light heavyweight. This fight is at middleweight. Todd Stout, very close fight. He won a split decision over Todd. Todd Stout did take him down 5 times in that fight, so there was a bit of a takedown weakness apparent. I mean, like I said, it was up at light heavyweight, but Todd Stout 5 takedowns and a lot of top control in that fight. His next fight, a couple of months later, no idea how to pronounce the guy's name, but it was down at middleweight. Actually went 5 rounds. Showed improved takedown defense in that fight, but I mean, Todd Stout 9-3. This guy he fought was 7-4. So it's like, how high caliber is this guy? He got Mark down a number of times, but Mark posted really well on the takedowns and would get back to his feet very quickly. But there was long spells where, as in the Todd Stout fight, where he was being clinched against the fence and didn't really have much of an answer for it. He ultimately won the split decision. He lost the 5th round. The 5th round was the first time where he got taken down and was kept down, and he was dominated from top position once this chap did get him to the floor. He then fought Brendan Kornberger. Didn't really see any ground action in that one, if memory serves me right. It was mainly stand up, but we did see Brendan have some success in the clinch in terms of controlling him against the fence. And then he took on Adam Hunter, who, I mean, that guy came out aggressive. Mark didn't like that at all. Actually took Adam down and finished Adam on the floor for a mount, knocked him out for a mount. So interesting fight, this one. How much has Mark improved since the Stout fight and since the fight with Gavrilovic? That was that was 2 months within each other, so we're going back about just under 18 months now, because there was a takedown defense weakness, albeit against Gavrilovic. He did post better and get back to his feet better, but 5th round we did see him taken down and kind of dominated from top control. But it definitely weakness for him is in the clinch on the fence. Now, it's hard to know what kind of game plan Sanchez is going to come in with. Is he going to look to wrestle? I don't know, because I don't think he wants to be exerting too much energy, attempting takedowns if they don't come easy. So I've got a feeling this isn't going to hit the mat, but what I do feel is that Sanchez can definitely have success in the clinch against the fence. We saw Gavrilovic have a lot of back control time standing, which I can see Sanchez having success with. And then when they're at distance and separated and standing, it was probably going to be a close fight. Mark's got a bit of power, but Sanchez, I mean, he was knocked out prior to the UFC, but he's shown a decent enough chin to me in the UFC. Don't think he's going to be easy to put away with strikes. The Ryan James one was more an accumulation, and Sanchez literally could barely hold his hands up. So yeah, I think it's very competitive on the feet. I don't see Sanchez really hitting takedowns because I just can't see him trying to exert too much energy, but he is very solid in the clinch, and I can see him having long extended spells of success in the clinch. -140 favourite. It's probably about accurate. It's just tough from a betting perspective. It's very tough to trust Sanchez. I bet him small in his last fight against Perez. I think that was an even money line, and I was impressed with the changes he's made and how he'd adapted his game. Mark making his UFC debut. How's he going to look in the UFC? He hasn't faced the highest level of competition, and he didn't blow me away, I've got to say, in any of his performances, really. I mean, he looks like a solid enough fighter, but you know, the last two guys didn't really come in with any kind of grappling heavy approach, whereas Stout and Gavrillich did, and they both had success with it. You've got to imagine that Sanchez is definitely going to mix in at least clinching on the fence. I'm sure, I didn't go back and try and find it, but I'm sure when I was looking at betting Sanchez against Perez, I'm sure GSP said that he's got the best kind of clinch wrestling that he's ever seen. So this guy, you know, he's legitimate against the fence in terms of having that control time, and I could definitely see it being an avenue he's going to explore. So I'm going to go with Sanchez to win a decision here. I think on the feet it's going to be competitive, but I just think he's going to have a lot of clinch control on the fence time. I can see him getting the rear waist lock, having control there, just firing in knees, and just doing enough not to gas himself out. But it's always nervy betting Sanchez, because that gas tank, I mean, if you gave the guy a solid gas tank, he'd be a legitimate prospect in the division, but it's always going to hold him back, because I don't think he can be the fighter he wants to be because of that gas tank. So he's had to adapt, change his style up. As I said, look, it impressed me against Perez in terms of the changes that he made, but there is going to be competition further along the line where it's not going to work, this adaptation, and he's going to fall short. So, but yeah, I've not been massively impressed by Mark, and unless he makes a kind of big step up here, I'd see this being Sanchez's fight. So I go with Sanchez to win a decision. But it's hard to bet Sanchez as a favourite because of that worrying gas tank that we have seen time and time again. But he's done his camp at TriStar again here, so I imagine he comes in with a smart game plan again. So I'll go Sanchez decision. Men's heavyweight division, another low-level heavyweight fight. Walt Harris taking on the Russian Sergey Spivak. Sergey did some tape on him. He's fought real low-level competition. Hasn't fought anyone of note. I don't even know if he's fought anyone with a winning record. He's 9-0. I said a Russian. I think he's Ukrainian actually. Nicknamed the Polar Bear. Not seen a polar bear in the UFC since Paul Varlan's back in the right early days of the UFC. If any of you have never seen Paul Varlan's fight, go and have a watch. He's got the famous fight with Marco Huas, where he gets kind of, it was our first introduction really in MMA to leg kicks, in terms of chopping the tree down, as the saying goes. Just chops him down with leg kicks. But Sergey here, 24, so could be making big improvements. He trains over in Russia or the Ukraine, somewhere over in Eastern Europe. I went and looked at a few of his fights. It's hard to glean too much from them. He beat the Aiemann, Travis Fulton. Looked a lot bigger than Travis in that fight. And he beat Tony Lopez, who's a veteran, in his last fight. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, he looks a bit rough around the edges. It's just hard to gauge when he's fought absolutely nobody, basically. He's had real easy competition. I said he's not fought anyone with a win. He has. He's fought Tony Lopez and Travis Fulton, who are both got way more wins than they've got losses. I mean, I guess he's done what you expect him to do in his wins, but yeah, it just doesn't look that great to me. I mean, Walt Harris, we know he's got some shortcomings. Coming off a win over Orlovsky, I believe it was overturned though. Before that, easy win over Daniel Spitz. Mark Godbeer got disqualified in that fight he was comfortably winning. Lost quickly to Verdun before that, and then he was coming off wins over Sherman and Asker. So, I mean, Walt's a decent enough fighter. You know, he beats the low-level heavyweights. One that coming off that win over Orlovsky. You know, he's been in there with much better competition. He's not someone I fully trust though, Walt Harris. But he's definitely looked better in his second run in the UFC as opposed to his first run ever since he came back when he fought Cody East. I mean, he's only lost, if you discount the disqualification loss to Mark Godbeer in a fight he was winning pretty easily, he's only lost to Fabricio Verdun, which he took on. I mean, he was fighting on the card, but he took Verdum on about, I think it was less than 24 hours notice, and he lost a split decision to Shamil Abdu Rimakov, which it could have gone either way, that fight. Really, really close. So he has looked better in his second run in the UFC for sure. But yeah, he's just a hard guy to have too much faith in. But I'm gonna pick him here. He has got good stand-up ball. He does crack. I think Spivak just looks a bit rough around the edges. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Spivak wins, but Walt's the bigger guy. He's got power. He's got better stand-up. I'll go with Walt to win this fight. He's a -150 favourite. Yeah, it's maybe about right based on what we've seen from Spivak, but Walt's 35. He probably is who he is now. Spivak 24. There is a lot of room for improvement there. Whether he's ready for the UFC, 9-0. I mean, he probably is. The UFC heavyweight division isn't particularly deep, especially at the lower level. Maybe give him some fights at the lower level, kind of like Walt's had. I mean, Walt, except for the Verdum fight, Walt's never really, I think, he's kind of just flitted around the lower to mid levels of the UFC. They've never given him the step up outside of Verdum, which was them needing a favour more than anything. So let's see how Spivak does in the lower leagues, but I'll go with him to take a debut loss here to Walt Harris. Walt could get him out of there. He's got power, but he can be a bit low volume. Might be a decision. But yeah, on the feet, I think he's definitely the more skilled operator. So I'll go with Walt to win a decision here. Back to the men's bantamweight division. We've got Merab Dvalishvili taking on Brad Katona. So this is a good fight. I'm looking forward to this one. We first met Brad on The Ultimate Fighter, which he actually came through and won. Looked fairly well rounded on The Ultimate Fighter. He trains out of SBG in Ireland, but he is Canadian. Quick look at the stats first. They're the same height, 5'6". Merab's got a 3-inch reach advantage. Both orthodox, both the same age. Significant strikes landed per minute. Brad is basically at 5. Merab's just under 4. Strikes absorbed. Brad's just under 3. Merab's just over 2. Takedown average, Brad averages 1 takedown per 15 minutes. Merab is up at over 7. Takedown defense, Brad Katona's is 42%, Merab's is 80%. So the stats kind of tell you what kind of fight we're going to get here. Brad's going to want to keep it on the feet. He's going to want to try and outstrike Merab. Merab's going to try and smother, hit as many takedowns as he can, and just grind his way to a victory, basically. But yeah, so Brad won The Ultimate Fighter. Beat Kyler Phillips, beat Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell, really competitive fight. This was up at 145 as well, The Ultimate Fighter, which he won, so he won it at featherweight. Yeah, Bryce Mitchell, really competitive fight. Managed to get the submission late in the third round, and then he faced Jay Cucanello in the final. Jay was a late replacement, I think, for someone that got injured. Comfortable win there, hurt Jay a couple of times on the feet and out-wrestled him pretty comfortably, and made his UFC debut against Matthew Lopez, and he looked solid in that fight against Matthew Lopez. Matthew took him down a few times, but Katona is a black belt in BJJ, worked back to his feet pretty easily and pretty much just comprehensively outstruck Lopez for that fight. So it was quite an impressive debut, actually. Merab, we saw him make his debut against Frankie Sands, lost a split decision. Very controversial decision loss there. A lot of people thought Merab won that fight. He was just on Frankie for 3 rounds, just trying to take him down. Didn't really do any damage. So the 2 of the judges ultimately opted with Frankie for damage that he did. He landed some solid knees in the clinch when Merab was coming in, and ultimately it swayed the judges. Another controversial fight against Ricky Simon. Fight he was going to win a decision in, and he got caught in a guillotine for like almost a minute of the last minute of round 3, and there was just a lot of conjecture over whether he was out or not when the bell went, and ultimately they ruled that he was out and gave the victory to Ricky Simmons. So it's one of the more controversial endings to a fight you'll ever see in the UFC, and he's coming off a easy win over Tyrion Ware, just wrestled Ware for 3 rounds basically. So as I said a little while ago, so this is a striker versus grappler fight. Brad's going to want to keep this on the feet. He's definitely the better technical striker. He's at a reach disadvantage. Merab trains with Cerrone. He throws a mean right hand. If you said to me this fight is going to be at range for 3 rounds though, I would definitely take Brad, but it's not Merab's game at all. The guy is a absolute beast. He's going to be on you for 3 rounds. He's going to be trying to hit takedowns. He's got solid takedowns. The Frankie Sands fight, he did slow down against Frankie Sands. I can't remember if that was short notice or not, but it was his UFC debut. But he came out kind of an exact same pace against Ricky Simon, and he didn't slow down. So I'm just going to put that gassing against Sands down to his UFC debut. Possible short notice. I'm not sure though if it was. But Ricky Simon, he was fine. I hold Ricky Simon in high regard, and if it wasn't for that guillotine and it was still a controversial ending, he was going to win that fight. Yeah, he's got really good wrestling. He just stays on you. Top control is where he seems a little bit weak. He couldn't keep Frankie Sands down, but Frankie Sands, he's a Division 1 wrestler. And he couldn't keep Ricky Simon down either. But I mean, Ricky Simon's a really, really solid scrambler. Did keep Tyrion Ware down. Excuse me, for long periods, but Tyrion Ware's big weakness is his takedown defense. So it's hard to read too much into that, but he is at Cerrone. He's going to be training with Aljamain Sterling, so they're the same weight class, so he's going to be getting great grappling training in day out with that guy and all the other beasts that I'm sure they've got there. Brad Katona, yeah, he wins his fight if it stays on the feet. I'm pretty confident of that, but can he keep it on the feet? His takedown defense isn't very good. We've seen him taken down on The Ultimate Fighter. Bryce Mitchell took him down, no problem. We've seen in his UFC debut, Matthew Lopez took him down, no problem. But he does reverse or get back to his feet pretty quick. He's pretty slick in that regard from what we've seen anyway. So this is going to come down to, can Merab keep him down? If Merab can't keep him down, is Merab going to be able to stick to him like glue and just keep on him and just basically keep taking him down? He sets a ferocious pace. So it's a hard fight to be massively confident in, because, as I say, if Merab can't keep him down, which I've got a feeling he's going to struggle to maintain top position for long periods of time, can he stick to him like glue? And Merab doesn't tend to give you space, or if he does, it's not for very long. He's back on you, he's back attempting takedowns. Has Brad's takedown cardio rather going to hold up under that onslaught as well? No, he's just a nightmare guy to face, Merab. He's just going to be in your face. So I'm going to go with Merab to win a decision here. But yeah, I say he's got to fight somebody. He's got to fight how he always does. He's just got to be in his face, close the distance, just attempt takedowns. When he does get top control, try and keep it for as long as he can. Try and get some kind of dominant position on the ground. Just stay on him for 3 rounds. Just don't give Katona space to work. He's got some nice leg kicks. He's just got to keep that space completely closed. It's in Canada as well. Katona is Canadian, so you've got to be wary if you're Merab of the crowd bias, cheering for every shot that Katona lands, swaying the judges, or not lands, but just any shot that's thrown, the crowd cheer for it. It can sway judges, so Merab's just got to be on him, fight like he always does. I'll go with him to take a decision win. His lines, I think it was -150 last time I looked. Still -150. It's a close fight. I wouldn't be surprised if that line comes in a little bit, but Merab's just got that style it's kind of scary to bet against, because he's just going to be on your guy, and Brad's going to have to fight the perfect fight. Fight goes to decision, -230. I mean, personally, I don't like betting fights go to a decision. It's just too much of a sweat for me, but I don't think that's a bad line. I don't see a finish in this fight really at all. I want the over. If that holds, the over 2.5 is probably going to be -250, -275, and then you could look at a Merab decision. That's That's probably not going to be great. It's probably going to be about an even money line. You might as well take the money line just in case Merab does finish and you shoot yourself in the foot. Brad Katona decision if you like Brad. But I do see this going to a decision, but it'll be a competitive fight, but I'll take Merab decision. Next, men's featherweight division, we've got Cub Swanson taking on Shane Burgos. Probably the fight I'm most looking forward to on this card. This should be an absolute barn burner. I've got to be honest, I'm really struggling to have a strong lean on this fight from a betting perspective anyway. Let's have a quick look over their stats. So we've got Cub Swanson, 3-inch height disadvantage, 5-inch reach disadvantage, strikes landed per minute. Shane's up at 6.5, Cub just over 4, strikes absorbed, Cub just over 3, Shane up at 5.5. Takedowns, I definitely don't expect any takedowns from Shane Burgos. Cub, he does mix in some kind of judo takedowns now and again. He only averages just over 1 takedown per 15 minutes, so I wouldn't be shocked to see him throw something in here, but this fight's going to be on the feet. This is going to be a stand-up fight. I wouldn't look too much into the kind of grappling tendencies here. The question for me here is how much does Cub have left? Is he on the decline? He is 35 years of age now. He's had 35 fights. He's had some tough fights in his time in the UFC. I rewatched the Korean Superboy fight. To be fair, he didn't take as much damage in that fight as I thought he did. It is more Choi that takes the beating in that fight. His first fight with Frankie Edgar, he took a prolonged beating over 5 rounds in that fight. So yeah, he's had some tough fights in the UFC. He's been around a long time. He's been in the UFC since 2011. Before that, he was in the WEC. So he's had a long career now, 35 years of age. He's coming off 3 straight losses, but Brian Ortega, Frankie Edgar, Moicano, 3 of the top guys in the division. Before that, he won 4 in a row, and his losses prior to the 4 in a row wins were Max Holloway and again Frankie Edgar. So he's only ever lost to top guys. Jens Pulver back in 2007 when Jens was kind of on top of the world. Jose Aldo, Chad Mendes, Ricardo Lamas, Holloway, Edgar twice. He only loses to top competition. Shane, always in entertaining fights. Made his debut against Traitor, comfortable decision win, had him hurt multiple times. Charles Rosa stopped him in the 3rd round in a fight he was actually behind on the judges' scorecard. Pepe, comfortable decision win. Lost to Calvin Kattar in a really entertaining fight. Looked like he'd taken the ascendancy in that fight. He won the 2nd round, looked like the momentum was with him, and then he got caught and pounded out in early in the 3rd round. And then Kurt Holloway got dropped, but when Kurt followed up to ground and pound, he managed to armbar him. So Shane, he's got a big reach advantage here, but he doesn't really use it. He's kind of happy to trade in the pocket. That's what his style is all about. Very big featherweight. I mean, he's got nice combinations, but he's just very hittable. There's going to be opportunities here for Cub to land, for sure. It's just what version of Cub are we getting? The betting line's up at -175. No, I don't like that at all personally. I think this should be closer to a pick'em fight. I think it's going to be very competitive unless Cub is a shot, which there is that possibility he could be slowing down. Just not quite sure where he's at. I kind of said after betting Jacare at the weekend that I need to be very careful when I'm betting guys that are possibly getting to the end of their career, or there could be a dramatic drop off at any point due to their age and accumulation of damage, especially as favourites. Now Cub is an underdog here, so you are going to be getting plus money on him if you want to bet him. But Shane is tough. I mean, he did get stopped by a Calvin and dropped by a Kurt, so that kind of style he has had what kind of longevity does he have with regards to his chin? Because you can't keep taking shots. He's got a high ratio of strikes absorbed per minute already in the UFC. This is going to be I can see this being a shootout. Is Cub's chin going? He got dropped by a jab in his last fight by Moicano. A tough fight for me to call this one. I'm going to go with Shane just because he's a younger man, but I definitely can't bet him at -175. I think this should be more closely lined as a pick'em fight. I think Cub's being a little bit disrespected. People are probably seeing he's coming off 3 straight losses, but Shane would lose to those 3 guys. I don't really see, there's no shame in them. It's just a bit worrying the way he did get dropped by Moicano with the jab. And against Frankie Edgar, it was just a flat. I mean, maybe he was just worried about engaging because he was having flashbacks to the first fight where he got taken down a lot and took a bit of a beating on the mat. But yeah, it was just a flat performance against Edgar. And I mean, Ortega, he was winning on the feet, but just every time Ortega managed to cinch up that neck, it was panic stations. And then after the Choi fight, he beat Artem Lobov. He did drop the first round in that fight. Managed to win the next 4 though. But yeah, it's just I'm going to go with Shane just because I think he's the fresher guy, much newer into his MMA career. He hasn't got as much mileage, albeit he does get hit way too much. He trains out of a good camp. I do like that camp, that Tiger Schulman camp. I'm just going to go with the fresh legs here, but -175 is not a bet for me. I think it should be closer, because if Cub isn't shot, which we can't be 100% sure he is, if we get the Cub from the Korean Superboy fight, then man, we've got a showdown here. So I'll go with Shane, but I'm not overly confident. Not a fight that I can confidently bet, especially at the current line. So I'll go with Shane, but close fight. Co-main event is Derek Brunson taking on Canada's own Elias Theodorou. Ah man, this is a tough fight as well to call. Elias gets a lot of stick, but he wins fights ultimately. The guy's got a 16-2 rather professional record. He's only lost to Thiago Santos and Brad Tavares, and the Brad Tavares fight was extremely close. The guy wins fights, he's beaten Mutanti. It's a solid win. It's coming off a win over Eric Anders. He's just got that style that's just hard to look against. He slaps air a lot. This is in Canada, so the crowd are going to be cheering. But he just puts volume out there. He's difficult to tag because he moves a lot. I used to think he had really, really solid cardio, but his last couple of fights, he's definitely slowed down in them. I mean, he did get hurt by Anders in round 1. That might have contributed. What I do think that's contributing is the massive weight cut he makes. But I think he cuts from something crazy like 220, 225. Because I'm sure I've seen him rehydrate back up from 185 to 215 or so the next day. So that stuff's going to catch up with you at some point, because that's a lot of weight to be cutting. So yeah, his gas tank seems to have definitely. I'm not saying that it's bad, but I used to one of the things I used to say about him was amazing cardio, but he's definitely slowed in his last couple of fights. But 30 years of age, trains out of TriStar. It's just awkward guy to look good against. He's got solid takedown defense, and if he does get taken down, his get-ups are really, really good. The weakness is his hands. He's got really poor hands, but he just spams kicks from the outside. Shown a solid chin. He's taking on Derek Brunson, who has been in the past very irresponsible with regards to his cardio. He's come out and tried to blitz people, and it's ultimately cost him. If we go back to, let's just look at from the start of his UFC career basically. So his second fight in the UFC was Yoel Romero. He was 2 rounds up going into the 3rd round, but he really slowed down in round 3, and he ultimately got stopped. And he fought Lorenz Larkin. He wrestled Lorenz Larkin for 3 rounds. And and it was kind of after the Larkin fight that his style seemed to change completely, and he just fell in love with trying to blow guys away. And I mean, it was working for him, and I think he got a little bit too carried away with the style though, because he blew away Ed Herman, he blew away Sam Alvey. I mean, you could maybe argue that Alvey's stoppage was a little bit premature, and if it didn't get stopped there, I've got no idea how gassed Brunson would have been, because he threw everything at Alvey. Then he got the quick win over Ron Canero, quick win over Uriah Hall. You know, the guy's got power in his hands. But then he tried that same style against Robert Whittaker, just came out and tried to blitz him. And when you step up to that level of competition, it's that doesn't work, and he found that the hard way. And I mean, to be fair, he did have Robert in a little bit of trouble at one point, but Robert rode the storm and just took him out, finished him in the first round. He then fought Anderson Silva, who he gave a lot more respect to, utilised his wrestling more in that fight. He lost the decision that he probably should have got that decision, to be fair to him. Yeah, he did fight smarter in that fight. He definitely gave Silva respect, and rightly so. Then went back to his, well, I'd say went back to his old ways, but it wasn't like he was swarming recklessly. He took out Daniel Kelly and Lyoto Machida. I think they was both like single shots. So the guy definitely cracks. But he's coming off 2 stoppage losses. He lost to Jacare, got caught with a head kick, and ultimately follow-up punches, and he's coming off the loss to Israel Adesanya as well. So I just don't know what Derek Brunson to expect here. I really don't. Is he going to come out and try and blitz Elias? Elias is tough, but you know, we've seen him hurt. We've seen him hurt in his last fight. But Eric Anders, and Brunson does hit hard. If you know, or is he? I don't think he's going to have any joy wrestling. He's a decent wrestler, Brunson, but Elias has solid takedown defense, and as I said, he's got very good get-ups. So this fight for me is going to play it on the feet. If Brunson can't put him away early, can he box his way to a decision against Elias? I'm not sure he can, because Elias is so awkward. It's hard enough for good strikers to look good against Elias on the feet. Let alone, you know, Brunson isn't a bad striker, he's got good power, but he's not someone that, you know, he doesn't win through an accumulation kind of style of racking up the points. I mean, just looking at his UFC fights again, when he has won decisions, Chris Lieben, he wrestled, I remember that fight. Brian Houston, quick win. Yoel Romero, he was 2 rounds up against through wrestling. Lorenz Larkin, he beat and won a decision through wrestling. Then he had the run of 4 quick KO wins. Anderson Silva, he should have got that decision mainly through the wrestling. Yeah, the only way he's won historically decisions is by wrestling, and I just don't think he's going to be able to wrestle Elias. As I said, if he does get him down, I don't think he can keep him down. So this fight's going to be on the feet for 3 rounds, unless he can put Elias away early. If he doesn't put Elias away early, and he does blow his wad, then Elias is going to take over and just kick the air to death and win a decision. So I'm going to go Elias. I think I think Brunson needs to put him away early, or he's going to lose his fight on volume. So, and Elias is, you know, he's tough. You know, even you go back and watch the Thiago Santos fight, and I mean, people give Elias a lot of stick for his style and so forth, but he's a tough guy. Go and watch that Thiago Santos fight and tell me he's not tough. Hung in there, a lot of people would have gone down from what they was taking. Hung in there against Eric Anders when he got hurt as well. So, no, he's a tough guy, and he can win fights. He knows how to win fights. You know, as I said, the Brad Tavares fight, very, very close. You couldn't have moaned if you got that decision. So, you know, in theory, you could be looking at 1 loss in his whole career, and that was to Thiago Santos. So, yeah, I don't think Brunson's going to be able to put him away early, and I think Elias, you know, he's an expert at winning decisions. Derek Brunson isn't. Derek Brunson either knocks you out in the first round, or he loses. He can wrestle. He's wrestled his way to a couple of wins in the UFC, but I just don't think he can get that area of his game going against Elias. Let me just go to the stats. Let me just see what Elias's takedown defense is sitting at. I mean, I know his get-ups are really good though, so I just don't think Derek can keep Elias down, even if he does hit takedowns. Brunson's got 2-inch reach advantage, same height. Elias is okay. His takedown defense is at 60%, a bit lower than I actually anticipated. But as I said, he's got really good get-ups. He managed to keep getting up against like Mitante, for example, who is very strong, top positional grappler. I just can't see Derek being able to keep him down. So I'm going to go with Elias to win a decision here. I think he's actually the underdog as well. Odds on this fight are it's practically an even line. Derek Brunson's minus 115. If you do live bet, it's probably you probably could get a solid line on Elias after round one if Derek does attempt his normal blitz and it doesn't work. You might get a solid line on live bet, but I think this fight's going to a decision. Fight goes to a decision, minus 180. That's not a bad line. So basically, if Derek doesn't finish, I mean, it's basically a bet on Elias surviving round one. I think that's pretty good odds actually. I don't like betting fight goes to decision because it's a 15-minute sweat, but yeah, I think there you're just betting on Derek not finishing in round one. But anyway, there's Elias, is there a bet there for Elias? I'd prefer plus money, and it is a hard fight to call. But I just think if he can't get him out there in round one, I think advantage Elias Theodorou. So I'm going to take Theodorou to win a decision. We move to the men's lightweight division next, 155, main event of the evening. Ottawa Iaquinta, Donald Cerrone. Tough fight for me to call this one. I really don't have a read on this. I think it's an incredibly tough fight to get a strong read on. Quick look over the stats. Both are bona fide UFC veterans, so worth looking at the stats here. Donald's a couple of inches taller. He's got 3-inch reach advantage. He's 4 years older. Al lands over, both actually very similar strikes landed per minute, just over 4. Strikes absorbed, exactly the same, both at 4. Takedowns, I mean, I don't expect Al to go for a takedown here, but I mean, Donald can mix them in, the takedowns. He averages just over 1 per 15 minutes. Al's not going to wrestle here, but yeah, Donald might try and mix it in, but Al's a solid grappler. We saw him survive against Khabib. I expect this to mainly play out on the feet. For me, it's a hard fight to get a read on, just because Al, if you look at his UFC career, he hasn't really fought any strikers outside of Jorge Masvidal. He did fight Ross Pearson, but otherwise we just haven't really seen him against someone who's kind of comfortable standing there with him, except Jorge Masvidal, who had him in big trouble in round 1. And then Masvidal just decided to coast in round 2 and 3, and he ultimately won a controversial split decision over Masvidal. But it's just a hard fight for me to call, just because I just haven't seen him against a stand-up guy really. He impressed me a hell of a lot in his last fight with Kevin Lee. He impressed me against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Took that on short notice, went 5 rounds. Shame he didn't pick up the pace in that fight on the feet, but I think he was just worried about overextending and getting taken down. But yeah, he certainly put in a solid performance against Khabib. Before that, knocked out Thiago Sanchez with 1 punch, and I mean, he had been really inactive up until last year. So he had 2 fights last year, and now he's fighting again already, which is good to see, because I do rate Al. He's a solid fighter. He's got solid power on the feet. He's going to want to keep this on the feet. He's going to want to try and knock Donald out. Donald's gone back down to 155. Had quite an extended spell at 170 where things started off for him well, but started to peter out towards the end. He got stopped by Jorge Masvidal twice really in that fight. It was a pretty real tough fight for Donald. I've got to admit, after that fight I wondered if it was beginning of the end for him. He then lost to Robbie Lawler, a very competitive fight, could have gone either way that one, but then he got stopped by Darren Till, so it was again, is he on the way out? He then beat Yancy Medeiros, stopped him in the first round, which I thought he would do in that fight because I think Yancy's very chinny. Then he lost to Leon Edwards. Apparently he was really sick for that fight. He lost the first 3 rounds, but he came back and won the last 2. And then he's coming off the wins over Mike Perry. Armbar, Mike Perry took him down and got armbarred. And then he moved back to lightweight, and Alex Hernandez, who was a favourite over him, which I thought was pretty crazy. And Alex Hernandez was just not ready for Cowboy, man. I mean, Cowboy was on fire in that fight, but he's got a tough fight here in Al Iaquinta, but it's a tough fight for me to call. I think I've got to go Al just because I know Cowboy's coming off those 2 wins, but he's had a hell of a lot of fights. He's taken some damage. Al can crack. It's definitely not a confident pick, because I just honestly, I've got to be completely honest, it's a tough fight for me to get a read on. As I said, Al just hasn't faced anyone that's a striker really outside of Masvidal. So the line's come down a bit actually. Al's minus 140 now. But it's a tough one for me to call. I've got no idea. I definitely won't be betting this fight. I'm not even I started to look at tape and it was just like, no, there's no point. I'm not going to have a read on this from a betting perspective. 100% a pass for me as a bettor. If you've got a strong read on it, fair play. I don't really know how you can have a strong read, but if you feel you do, then obviously go with it. But really, really tough fight to call. I'd probably call it a pick'em. Line's not far short of a pick'em, but at the same time, Donald plus 120, I'm not really overly keen with betting him either here, so I'm going to go with Al just because he's taken less damage. He's looked very solid his last couple of fights. Hunger's been a question mark for Al as well, but he's back fighting regular, so hopefully the hunger's back. I'll go with Al to win. I mean, he could stop Donald, perhaps he does bang, but decision wouldn't surprise me, so I don't know how he wins, whether it'll be a stoppage or a decision, but I'll go with Al, but I'm definitely not betting this fight. So that wraps up the UFC Ottawa card. Good luck everyone. Just a reminder, subscription packages for live bet and pre-bets, prommmabetting.com. We're 11-2 on UFC cards in 2019. £100 per unit or $100 per unit bettors are up £6,400 with us this year, so jump on board. Let's hopefully get back on the winning track for this UFC card. I think I know what I'm betting, so bets should go out to members shortly. Give us a follow on Twitter at prommmabetting and hit the subscribe button on here. Get me to 500 please guys, and I'll be back for the UFC this time next Monday. Good luck all.